just said that was it. Like, I'm going to stand up for me and stand up for myself. And I looked in the mirror. I walked to the mirror, looked in the mirror, and I don't know how to explain the shame that I felt, but inside that shame, I saw who I knew I was. I saw in my eyes the man that I thought I was, and I was going to fucking find out, because why not?
Today's interview on the Overcoming Graduation podcast, talking with my friend Jeremy Coombs, is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/OCG. That's audibletrial.com/OCG. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury, a show where I work to teach you everything I wished I'd known to help you graduate to the next level in your own life. Today, my guest is a friend of mine by the name Jeremy Coombs, and this story has a ton of twists and turns and ups and downs. Now, Jeremy's early years in his young adult life were filled with challenges associated with his addiction to alcohol. He went through a heartbreak, which ultimately led him to try and change his persona to be something he wasn't, and eventually he found himself getting lost in this separate persona and not really knowing who he truly was. One of the worst events in this time where alcohol had such a hold on him led him to being suspended from his studies at San Diego State for 2 whole years. But the tipping point came on a night where the last thing he remembers was looking down at a handful of pills and the moment where he was considering whether or not to take them. And after that, everything changed. Since that point, Jeremy has overcome his addiction to alcohol, has changed his mindset to always find the fun, is crushing it in sales, and has a son that absolutely adores him. In this episode, he's going to talk about what led to his addiction to alcohol, the events of the night where everything changed and he finally made the decision to beat his addiction, how he decided to stop running from things, face his demons, and finally love himself again after years of self-abuse, how to find the fun and how you can find the fun in your own life, why you should, and in quotes here, create the fairy tale, the 3 keys to getting any woman, and so much more. So along with this in the show notes, you'll find Jeremy's recommendations for books that have changed his life. You can see links to go connect more with Jeremy. But this episode is really interesting for me, and it was really powerful for a unique reason. This has never happened on any other episode of Overcoming Graduation. So when Jeremy and I started, and you'll be able to hear this if you pay close attention, the energy for both of us was low. Not so much in the sense that we were tired, more in the sense that he and I actually both had been having really shitty days, and neither of us knew about it until about halfway or 2/3 of the way through the interview, when we both said, man, I had a really tough day. Yeah, me too. And what's fascinating is that you can see as we connect and he shares his story and I'm getting excited hearing the lessons and we're sharing these messages, that the energy shows up. By the end of the interview, we are 2 totally different people. And the reason this is so powerful for me is because it shows the power of these stories for me and him live. Because anytime I listen to a podcast, it has an impact on me, but some really trigger something special. And just this conversation with a person who, Jeremy's just a fantastic guy. I love him, love to connect with him and have these types of conversations. It showed me, and it was just one of those really powerful reminders of how important it is to do the things that you love in your life and that are important to you, because it's what brings the happiness. There was a part of me that was like, oh man, I'm not in a good spot. I'm not going to do a good job on this interview. What if I don't ask good questions? Jeremy had said the same thing. After he said, I was worried that I wasn't going to be hype. I wasn't going to be ready for you. I wasn't going to bring value. But when you listen to this episode, you'll hear the incredible stories that Jeremy has to share. You'll see tons of valuable life advice. And there are lots of things that Jeremy shared that no other guest on this show has ever touched on. So this episode is really powerful. It's also close to my heart because it's a live example. And I really would love to hear your feedback on this if you can hear this too, and how at the beginning we were both a little down, we were both a little closed, but by the end we were our normal, happy, gregarious selves. So guys, thank you so much for joining me today, and I am so excited to introduce you to Jeremy Coombs. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. Today I would like to welcome Jeremy Coombs to the show. So Jeremy, thank you so much for being here, man.
Brian, nice to chat with you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Jeremy is another friend of mine that I met through Sean Stevenson, and he is the brother of another great friend of mine, Jamie, and he and I had some of the best conversations that I've had in a long time when I was out at Sean's conference just a few weeks ago. And I told him I wanted to bring him on the show to talk about relationships, to talk about life, to talk about pursuit of goals and facing the fears of failure and success. So I'm really excited to have Jeremy here with me. So Jeremy, as I said in pre-show, typically what we'll do is we'll kick things off from where you were at college graduation. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about what life looked like for you right when you were on the verge of graduating from college?
So for me, it was an interesting time in my life. I actually got suspended from San Diego State for 2 years and missed a year through the application process and had to go back. I was 11 units away from graduating, and I was 26 at the time. So I wasn't the typical younger college graduate. I got myself into a bit of a trouble, and I went back to finish what I started.
Mm-hmm. And at that, are you comfortable sharing what the trouble was, or would you rather keep that off?
No, I faced my demons. I punched a girl in the face.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I was highly intoxicated, and we got into a fight in a car. And needless to say, I was an idiot, and I swung back. Mm-hmm. But those were the days that I was drinking before I gave that up. Mm-hmm. And I was a moron and a maniac, and it cost me, like I said, 2 years at school and a lot of shame and grief.
Yeah, I can only imagine, because it's one of those things where I've been so drunk that I've done things that I don't remember, I can't explain, and I've had guilt and shame and grief over a ton of different things, so I can only imagine what you went through there. But I know we'll dig more into that piece of the story, because you and I have both had our ups and downs there. So when you did come out of college, so you said you're 26, you're a bit older, what were you looking to do, and what did the world look like and feel like at that point in your life?
Well, at that point, my family had a successful manufacturing firm here in San Diego. We manufactured roof trusses, which are the framing to your roof, and I was running the sales division. But I was also in the process of working, becoming a partner in a magazine with one of my friends called Happy Hour Magazine. Mm-hmm.
And so, all right, so you had one endeavor where you're working with your family's business, and then Happy Hour Magazine. So tell us a bit about Happy Hour Magazine and how that came to be.
So my friend had started the magazine with his dad because they couldn't find any good happy hours around San Diego, and he had this idea, and he had it going for a couple of issues, but he wasn't doing so well, and he knew that I was connected here in downtown San Diego, and I'm not very shy, so I started talking to people and jumped on board, and we went from a pretty small publication to doing pretty well.
That's great. Now, something I know a lot of listeners are concerned about is being able to do what they want and paying the bills. It's doing multiple things at once. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about what it was like to work 2 jobs at once and what you learned from, because you said you studied kinesiology back in school, now you're working in sales, and then you're also working on a magazine. So can you tell the listeners a bit about what it was like transitioning into the quote-unquote real world and working 2 jobs at once?
So what you learn is that you have more time than you think. Mm-hmm. People often say, oh, I don't have enough time to do this, I don't have enough time to do that. I think that's horseshit. You can do whatever you really want to do, and as long as you have an end goal in sight, if you like to have fun, if there's nothing wrong with having fun and blowing off steam, you seem to have fun. You seem to have time for that, and so having 2 jobs is it can be time consuming, and you have to be disciplined. But when you really want something, you just do it. You don't think about it. You do it, and you make the time for it. Mm-hmm.
And one of my biggest struggles, and something that I know many people struggle with, is balance. And like you said, making time for fun, making time for work. So are there any systems you put in place? Was there anything you did to make sure that you didn't stray too far one way or the other, that you didn't spend all your time working, you didn't spend all your time playing?
Well, the Happy Hour magazine was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't as bad as it would seem. But, when I was in college, I had 2 jobs. I went to school full time and I coached football. Right? So I learned time management back then. People forget that you don't need much time to reset your clock. It's about finding the beauty in each moment. And so there would be times, it would be stress going from one job to school, back to another job, and then going to coach football. And I get home at, leave the house at 6:30 in the morning, get home at 9, and I'm 20 years old. Mm-hmm. What I found is those drives, right? I lived at home and drove to San Diego State, which is, 15, 20-minute drive to work, cranking the music, finding the fun in the car, and those 15, 20-minute breaks and finding the fun in that. And then realizing, it was all for a bigger purpose. I was sacrificing now for later, and it didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm. I actually love what you just said about finding the fun in the moment, because I actually need that right now, because my life the past few weeks, like we were talking about in pre-show, has been very serious. It's felt very heavy. And the only way I've started to come out of it was by acting differently. And I've never heard it phrased finding the fun, but I really like that. I mean, it's a really perfect little way to capture it. So now, before we move on from your current career, or the careers that you were at this point in your life, football is something that I think teaches some of the best lessons in life. It taught me some of the biggest lessons I've ever learned. And even though I only played back in high school, it's interesting because there are so many different components of athletics that I think people could benefit from, especially team athletics. So can you share with the listeners a little bit about what are some of the most important things that you learned about not only commitment and drive and dedication, but developing young men while you were coaching football?
So I think the thing is, that's most important, is you teach people that you're working towards something bigger than you, because we're such a narcissistic society and we get so focused on us, what's in it for me. And when you're on a football team or any sports team, except for, your individual sports, you have to sacrifice. In football, you have to do your job. You do your job, and it's not glorious sometimes, the offensive line, or if you're a wide receiver and you're blocking for the running back, you're not putting up stats and highlight reels, but your block could spring the touchdown that wins the game. And so being able to teach kids and young men how to be able to see something bigger than themselves, because when you're a teenager, we're all really cocky and we think that we're the shit, and especially if you're good, and you walk around like the world, you can take over the world, which is fine, but just getting them to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think it's something that we talk about with young adults, with children, a lot. We talk about developing them, helping them grow, helping them see possibilities. But for some reason, we lose it as adults. All of a sudden, when we become adults, we get to college, we graduate, we stop talking about these things and seeing the bigger picture. And like you said, in finding the fun, there's also finding the purpose, finding the direction, finding the meaning in the moment. And if we don't check in with that regularly, it's very easy for us to shift and be off track. So jumping back to your story, so you were working for Happy Hour magazine, you were working for your parents' firm, working in sales. Now, sales is something I always like to talk about, because I think that salesmen can get a bad rap for, being the used car salesman stereotype. But my dad has worked in sales for 30 years, and I know what real sales is, in terms of providing value. But what I'd like to hear is not only how you define sales, but what are some of the biggest things you've learned from sales that you could share with the listeners?
So sales is a relationship game, right? You build relationships, you provide value, and then you get rewarded for it. It's as simple as that. Now, the lessons within that, I started my sales career selling books door to door when I was 19 in Wheeling, West Virginia. You learn how to, yeah, you can laugh, it was fun.
I can only imagine the people you met.
It was interesting, especially going from San Diego. I was born and raised in San Diego when I was 19, and I went to Wheeling, West Virginia, carrying a 30-pound book bag, and I worked from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. But with sales, you learn how to overcome rejection. If you can overcome rejection and just realize that it's not about you, right? And we take things so personal in life. And people aren't necessarily saying no to you as a person. They're saying maybe no to your product, your company. There's so many other different variables, but you get through rejection, and when you learn how to deal with rejection, nothing can really stand in your way. You can talk to a girl, you can talk to anyone, you can create any relationship because you're not afraid that you're going to get rejected. It's like, all right, well, I do this all the time. A no is a no, and then you realize a no is not always a no. It's just no for right now. Mm-hmm. It means no for not right now. And with sales, it could be you just didn't provide enough value, mm-hmm. right? And you just keep pushing. You set a goal and you keep moving.
And so to just a quick pause there. So the getting over fear of rejection, and essentially it's like anything else. It's the repetitions and putting in the work. So you've learned from sales, it's not about you, it's about the product or the time or whatever. What would you say about relationships? Like you go up, you ask that girl, get rejected. How do you keep that from pulling wind from your sales or from dragging you down?
I mean, happens to all of us, right?
Yeah. Let's
not pretend that it doesn't happen. Let's acknowledge that does happen, that you do get rejected and it does not feel good. Right? Let's not even blow it over.
Right.
But what you do know is that it's also a numbers game, and you're still a great person, right? Just because if it's a girl and you're pursuing her as a girlfriend and she says no, that doesn't make you a bad person. You might not, she just doesn't see you as a right fit for her life. And that's okay. That doesn't make her a bad person. Mm-hmm. It could be timing. What I've learned in relationships is timing is everything. If you want something or she wants something that you don't and you're not ready for it, which, is a whole nother topic, mm-hmm. then it might not work. But there's how many billions of people in this world? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, okay, she said no, it's all right. That's not the one right now. And I'm always a firm believer that the universe brings you what you need when you need it. Mm-hmm. And so saying, all right, I guess I didn't need her in my life. There's someone else watching over me. Whether you believe in God, the universe, energy, whatever it is for you, there's someone is up there doing something to help us realize who's supposed to be in our life and who's not.
Mm-hmm. Love that, because one of the things that I think is, I can't believe it when I hear it, when you see people that say she was the one and they're 19, 20 years old, like there's no one better that I'm going to meet. I met the perfect person and I blew it, which all of that is false. But at the same time, like you said, there's billions of people on the planet, and especially at a young age, how many people have you met? How far have you gotten out and explored? Because that's the best thing up to this point. And I think a lot of it comes down to our own view of our self-worth. We feel like we only deserve a certain thing if we have a very low self-image, which honestly most people do. There's so many times where I look at myself and only see flaws versus seeing how much I've grown or how much I've overcome. So now jumping back to your story, so you're working in sales, you're working at the magazine. What was the next step in your progression in life, whether it be in career? What was the next big milestone for you?
I quit drinking. Mm-hmm. I quit drinking 7 years ago, and that was the catalyst for the change in my life. And I stopped running from myself and the excuses, the filters that I had built up. And you want to talk about seeing yourself and seeing your flaws. Well, I created pretty much an alter ego that I lived to the T, and I hated myself for it.
Yeah, that's something I want to dig into, because I think it's the game, of course. It's for a very important reason, because I think we're really good at tricking ourselves into saying it's not that bad. Whatever it may be, whether it's sex or porn or drugs or even being a workaholic. I mean, there's all these different ways we distract, desensitize, and numb ourselves to get away from reality. But even more so, like you said, to get away from ourselves. So do you remember when you started drinking initially?
I mean, to the point where I was at was, when I joined the fraternity in San Jose State at 21. Mm-hmm. I didn't really drink a lot in high school, or, it wasn't anything like that. And then when I decided, the catalyst was I got my heart broken. I was tired of being a nice guy, and I recreated a person that I thought was a man, and I say man with quotation marks. Mm-hmm. And the alcohol allowed me to act out this fallacy that I had created.
Wow. Okay. So you had a heartbreak in your story, someone that you thought, I probably had those kind of thoughts about, like, oh, this person's perfect, everything, your heart gets broken, and you have this idea that, hey, I've been nothing but a good guy and this hasn't worked, so now I'm just I don't need to be a good guy anymore because clearly that doesn't work for me. And I think, you and I were talking about this. I, for most of my life, called myself a good guy, defined myself that way. and have had those same thoughts and feelings. Well, this doesn't work, and like, you've got to be a man, exactly like you said, quote unquote, this strong, overbearing, over aggressive. And I've learned so much more about masculinity now and what I really believe it means to be a man. But can you tell the audience a bit about what you believe that being a real man is, not the man in air quotes?
So what I think a real man is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a real man is a man who's comfortable with whatever situations he's in. If he needs to assert himself in a way that is positive without being overbearing, or being emotional, being vulnerable. And really, I think that's true strength, is being able to sit and be vulnerable with people, and not just your loved ones, because that's easy. We all can be vulnerable with loved ones, but with strangers, and be able to share, like, you and I met and we sat and we're completely vulnerable, like, Brian, check this out. And then what's interesting is that we connect on such a different level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, as men, we're taught we're not allowed to be vulnerable, and vulnerable is weakness. And yet, when you're vulnerable with other men, you start hearing stories like we shared, and we're sharing now. And so I think a real man is a man who can express himself, remain calm and assertive when he needs to, but still calm. You don't need to be an aggressive rageaholic like I was. I mean, I would just rage and flip out and then, find someone to punch.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's not it. It's, even if you need to be assertive, you can be controlled, use your language and your words to express and convey your emotions in a manner that benefit everybody.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think not only communicating and sharing the vulnerability, but allowing yourself to feel emotions. I think a lot of people confuse that with, you just become kind of a blubbery sad sack. But like you said, it's what one of my coaches called it is range, is having the emotional range and the ability to switch between caring and listening to fun and playful to sexy, to be able to bounce between these different emotional areas in our lives effortlessly. And to me, that feels much more like a definition of masculinity that I can get behind, because we're then working to enhance all the areas of ourselves and experience them fully, versus repress, what we define as, or what the old school definitions would be of weakness or showing too much emotion, and really stepping into who we are. Now, with the drinking in your past, because most people I think have had issues with this, have gone through it, have overdrank at some point. I know it's something that you said it was a dark time and you were running from yourself, but in what way did it really manifest, or what did you feel like you were running from the most? Was it a fear of the future? Was it a fear of the past? What was really driving that desire to drink and numb and escape?
So I was running from my energy. You've met me in person, the listeners haven't. You know that I'm a high energy. I'm that guy that lights up the room and has fun. Mm-hmm. And for so long, people try to just calm me down and say no. And also, I perceived vulnerability as weakness. Like, I know that I'm an emotional guy. I'm loving, I'm caring. I'm that guy that tells my friends that I love them. And that hadn't worked, right? Like, the way who I was hadn't worked, and so I'm like, well, let's change things. And so I was afraid to show that vulnerability, that emotion, because I was always getting hurt. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to go through that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the decision that, well, pain sucks, so how can I avoid pain? And it is one way to frame it. And one thing that I've learned is that there is no real way to escape pain. There's no way to get past it, around it, away from it. But we can choose what types of pain we face. We can face the pain of being ourselves and dealing with hurt, but pushing on, or we can deal with the pain of working to live someone else's life or working to be someone else. So it's really interesting how we can lean into these different moments and make different choices. But in my mind, pain is going to come at some point, and we can choose the different types of pain we experience, like choosing to exercise, so you get some pain there, not necessarily pain, but you know what I mean, or you can choose to sit on the couch and get the pain from inactivity. There's always a choice there in life. So you're 37 now, right? 36, okay. And so you said 7 years ago was when you made the decision to stop drinking. What was it that really was the pivotal moment that made you say, this has got to stop?
So the last car with a best friend and a girlfriend at the time, and I kicked the steering wheel of the car, and we swerved across the freeway. She was able to get control. We got off the freeway. Reese and I fought, and then I went home and destroyed my apartment, and I blacked out and all this. But in a blackout, we all know that we can remember one or two things. And the one thing I remember clearly is having a handful of blue pills. And they were Tylenol PM. And I can't tell you to this day if I took them or if I flushed them. I do know that they were gone. And I do know that when I woke up in the morning, I felt as bad as I've ever felt. And Reese told me about the story about what happened, and my apartment was destroyed. And I just sat there on my couch, sweating, hungover, the worst hangover of my life, and feeling the shame of the event, because I don't know if I tried to kill myself or yourself, but when the possibility of hurting innocent people or loved ones, I mean, God forbid that we would have crashed and what if everyone died in the car but me, or we had hit a family driving down the freeway, and for what? Well, because I couldn't handle my emotions and I was abusing alcohol? No, and I just said that was it. Like, I'm gonna stand up for me and stand up for myself. And I looked in the mirror. I walked to the mirror, looked in the mirror, and I don't know how to explain the shame that I felt, but inside that shame, I saw who I knew I was. I saw in my eyes the man that I thought I was, and I was gonna fucking find out, because why not? Like, what else was gonna happen? Was I gonna try to kill myself again? So if I died trying to become the man that I thought I was, then so fucking be it. But I was gonna do everything I could to be that man.
Right, yeah. And can you repeat what you said? You walked up to the mirror and you said something to yourself. It cut out for 1 second. I just don't want to miss that.
No, I just stared in the mirror and stared at myself, and in that shame, I was saying I can't even describe the shame that I felt, but I saw the man that I knew I could be and the man that I was, and I was going to do whatever I took to become that man.
What I think is really powerful about that story is how our darkest moments can be some of the most illuminating. Like you said, it took you kind of going down to this deep, deep low to be able to see who you knew you could become, and to be able to go far enough that you said, okay, I'm done with this. This is no longer going to be me. I'm going to make changes or die trying. Like, it's going to happen. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes these, and most times, I think for most people, it takes these really dramatic or traumatic events to get them to the point where they're willing to make that change. Now, I've never had to kick an addiction to alcohol or anything. I've definitely pushed it to points where I'm like, okay, I need to slow down. But can you tell I don't know what that experience is like, and from what I've heard, addiction is, I mean, I have my own addictions and things bad habits that I go back to, eating poorly and different things, but can you tell the listeners about what that process was like? And for anyone who's struggling with addiction right now, what advice would you give them on how to either get help or get off whatever they're on?
So my story is interesting because I just quit. I made a decision. I didn't go to meetings. I watched. I talked to Sean Stevenson. I watched a couple videos, and that was it. But for me, the hardest part about being an addict or abusing a substance is admitting that you become something that you never thought you would. And that moment right there, when you can say, I am this, and then for me, I had an alcoholic father who was abusive, and so I realized that I had become my dad, the man that I hated so much growing up. I love my dad dearly, but when he would drink, he would turn into this person, and that's what happened to me. Friends and loved ones would say, Jeremy, I love you when you're sober, but I can't hang out with you when you're drunk. I will not be around you when you drink. And I lost friends, and rightfully so. But having to say, okay, I am this person right now. The key is saying right now. Because the moment I quit, I was no longer that person. I was no longer that person anymore. I was 1 minute better.
Wow.
Right? And then it was okay, it was one day, then 2 days, and a week, and then it was dealing with the shame, right? Because there's so much shame when you abuse and you're an addict. You do things to people that you love and you hurt because you don't give a fuck about yourself, so you don't care about anyone else. And then being able to say, okay, I'm going to admit and face these, and I think it's a step in AA, but I haven't been, I don't know, but there's an important step where you have to make up for all of your transgressions. And so going back to those people and apologizing, but most importantly, the key is apologizing to yourself. Saying you're sorry and starting to love on yourself. And it doesn't happen over time. You can't just snap your fingers and like, I love you, because if you could, you wouldn't have got yourself in that place to begin with. But it's that moment knowing that, okay, I'm no longer that person. I'm not going to define myself as that. I'm better. This is who I am, and I'm going to be it. Right? I have this goal of being this person. I'm going to be it right now to the best of my abilities. And the thing is, like, if you do your best is not always the best that you got, but it's the best in that moment. And that's all it has to be. And being okay with saying, this is the best I got right now. And I think that people forget that we don't need to change dramatically so fast. If we can just get a little bit better every minute, every moment, every day, and maybe one day you took one step forward, but fuck, it was one step. And over the course of a year, if you only took one step, well, guess what? At the end of the year, 365 steps farther along the path than you were, realizing that there are going to be days you go 10, 15, 20, and exponentially. There's a day that comes when there's this giant weight lifted off your shoulders, and you're like, yes, here I am. Here I am.
Well, it's you creating the freedom to be you. It's you letting go of a story that you were holding on to of who you were. Like you said, it literally got to a point of being an alter ego because it was someone that was so not who you were. And I loved what you said, that you were one moment better. That in that instant, in that one decision, you were one moment better. You were one moment closer to being healed, cured, free of it, whatever it may be. So for everyone listening, keep that in mind. I have all kinds of guilt with all kinds of things because I want to do a lot of big things in my life. When I can't work out because I'm injured, I get mad, I get upset. I'm like, oh, look at you. I have guilt around my body. If I'm not where I want to be in my business, I have guilt around that. But the best things I found is exactly what Jeremy is saying is, what action can I take now? What's the best I can do today? And there are going to be days where there's very little you can do. And there are days where I do nothing but sit on the couch. And I don't like those days, but sometimes I need them, whether it's for emotional reasons, physical, or whatever. You got to recognize that anything big that happens is going to happen in small steps. Any big project, any big endeavor is going to take time. And all you've got to do is take whatever steps you can now. Because that's where the real changes come. When people try and totally change their diet, when they try to go to the gym for 2 hours a day when they haven't worked out in 2 years, give it a week, 2 weeks, a month, and the habits come back. But when you make small, incremental changes daily, that's where the real life changes come in. So Jeremy, love that, man. That's really, it's such an important lesson for people to learn. And I think hearing it in different contexts, especially in this one, is so valuable, because if there's anybody out there dealing with addiction or dealing with something they feel they can't overcome, understanding that all they need to work towards is to be one moment better versus 1 year, 1 month, I think that gives them something much more exciting to look forward to.
And celebrate that. Don't forget to celebrate that. And that's such an important component that people forget. Like, celebrate the little wins. Like, little wins are just as important as big wins. And yet we forget, like, we often overlook, like, I did this today, and we took it for granted. It's like, no. If it was, you went into a bar, if you have alcohol, and you went to a bar with your friends and you didn't have a drink for that night, even if you want to try to be sober, just don't want to drink for a while, whatever it is, celebrate that. Like, I did it, like, I did it. It feels good.
See, that is actually one of my biggest problems. And I'll look at my list. I got 20 things done that day, but then I'll look at the 2 things I didn't do and be like, ah, damn it, Brian. If you'd pushed harder, if you'd woken up earlier. So what are some examples of ways that you celebrate life, that you celebrate the little wins, and some recommendations you would have for both me and the listeners on how they can begin to celebrate more?
I mean, it's pretty easy. If you want to scream and yell, have a dance party, it doesn't. It really depends on the win you're celebrating, right? Because if it's a small win is just like a pat in the back, like good job. Just saying good job to yourself, right? Acknowledging yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're doing something big, you could be taking yourself to dinner. Is it, buying yourself, maybe it's a goal, whatever it is. But for me, it really is just smiling. I love having little dance parties. Love just to turn on the music. I sing, I dance in the car. And I save that shit specifically for the car. You know why?
Why?
Because I love the look on people's faces. Like, what in the hell is going on in that guy's car? Because they get a chuckle, right? Like, you're laughing because you can imagine it, right? You can imagine being next to me and seeing me having a dance party. And not only did I just celebrate my win, but I just had someone else laugh and have fun.
Wow. Okay. I love that because it's taking your win, your positive energy, your great moment, and it starts to share it. And it's one of those situations where whether they're laughing with you or at you, it doesn't matter because they're laughing and you don't really care.
Oh, irrelevant.
Yeah, because you're in so much joy at that point. So I love that, man, because it's funny, and I love to dance as well. And right now, I have one of those excuses. I can't dance because I strained multiple muscles in my core and on my lats and everything like we were talking about in pre-show. So the doctor said, no awkward jerking or twisting. And I was like, okay, so we're going to call that dancing, okay? But I'm like, I can't do that thing that I love. So I guess I can't be happy right now. It's like one of those things that flies under the radar. It's like, I can't work out right now. I guess I just have to focus on my job and be serious. But like you said, there's limitless opportunities to play and celebrate. And when I'm the happiest in my life is when I don't take things too seriously, because the 98% of things that we experience in life are really not that important. So
yeah, but then you think about like it's perspective and gratitude, right?
Yep.
You said something like, I can't do this, I can't do that, but what can you do, right? Like there are people saying, we'll use Sean for example. He's a good friend, close friend. You think Sean would like to walk?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can still walk.
Right.
You could still probably move your arms around and do like, that little circle, the train's coming down. You can, point to the Lord, do all the funky disco moves. Like you can't be moving, but you can sure as heck move your arms. And, like there's so many things that people forget that we can do, and to get into a place of gratitude and saying I get to do this, right? And here's another thing, like I have to do that. I have to go to work. No, I get to go to work. I got a job. Because, there's a huge homeless population here in San Diego. You don't think they'd like to go to work? Mm-hmm. I have a house. I get to wake up in a house every day. Let's even just start there. You woke up.
Yep.
Because what if you just never woke up? We get to wake up every single day and breathe air. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a day we don't, right? And so people forget to celebrate that. I literally celebrate waking up every single morning. I'm up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym. And believe me, there's days I don't want to get out of bed. It happens more often than not. But when I get my feet on the ground, I'm like, yes, I'm alive. Thank you, I'm alive.
Dude, I love it. And it's very timely for me because something that I've known for a while is that I just don't celebrate enough. And I think one of the stories I get going in my head is like, well, that's not big enough. It's got to be something big, and I've got to celebrate accomplishing this thing at work or this thing in my business. But what you're saying is so simple and so true. It's focusing, and for everyone who's unfamiliar, Sean Stevenson, who's a friend of Jeremy and ours, he's wheelchair bound, and that's why he was referencing like Sean would love to walk. And I mean, but the thing is, Sean is one of the people who finds what he can do more than anything and more than anyone. And like Jeremy's saying, if I just started to look at everything that I can do, that I am doing, that I have done, the amazing people in my life, instead of, the people that I want, the people I don't have, where's the girlfriend, the wife, the this, the that, life becomes a lot more exciting. And even just talking about it now, you can hear the energy in my voice because I'm thinking about all the great things. And even though I'm tired and it's been a long week, I see potential and possibility in just celebrating breathing and seeing and all the little things that we take for granted. And Jeremy, I think it's funny because there's a part of me, and I know skeptical people too, that goes like, so you're going to be Mr. Happy, Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, and I'm like, well, we're so quick to jump to the negative, but when someone jumps to the positive, why do we suddenly get skeptical? So What are some of, so you talked about the car, you talked about celebrating in the morning. Can you tell us about one or two of the experiences you've had recently that you're most grateful for? Because I love hearing about these types of things.
So, I have a son. He's 5 years old.
Yeah.
And I was going through it myself. Right? I'm as happy and positive as a person you'll meet, but everyone goes through it. Let's acknowledge we're all people. We go through shit, right?
Right.
And it's how you look at shit. You either let shit stink or you add some water, grow a flower, feed yourself. So I have my son, and I was going through it, and I'm putting him to bed, and he just looks at me and he smiles big. And he says, "Daddy, I love you." And he just has this big smile on my face. And I just sat back and realized, like, he sees himself in me. I'm his mirror. He doesn't even know. He copies me. And to see the joy he had on his face, I was like, you know what? I'm doing something right. I'm doing my 5-year-old, and he is energetic. Like, you obviously can tell I'm high energy. My son's the same exact way. He's not shy. He loves to give hugs. He runs around. And to see that, to see him, and then I think about the way that my energy is conveyed to other people. One of my favorite things is just complimenting people, giving a sincere compliment to a stranger, and watching them light up, because you don't know what people are going through, right? And you don't know who might need some affection and attention. And I've been doing this, so I give compliments. I work in a office building, and our office is on the top floor. It's only 11 stories, but people get in the elevator and I start talking. If there's guys, like today I challenged some guys to a kung fu fight. Right? Like the door closed, I was like, all right, boys, it's kung fu fight time. Who's ready? And, and everyone starts laughing, because you know how it is. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Because we get in the elevator, we pretend like no one else is there, right? Like, I can't see you. No, motherfucker, I'm a human being. You can see me, I see you, right? So I make it awkward on purpose, because people love to open up. They just don't like to take that first step, right? And so it's really about taking that first step, because I know they want to talk. Like, I've only had one person ever that I've actually done something like that, like kung fu fight or give a sincere compliment, who just shut me down. and it is amazing what happens when you just talk and people open up, and we all love connection. And so I just been having fun with that. Like, the elevators are so much fun. Because I've had some of the funniest conversations in the elevator with random people.
Dude, I love that, because I work in an office building too, and something that I think about all the time, probably a weird amount, is how awkward it is when you are walking down a long hallway and you see somebody else at the other end of the long hallway. I think it's one of the most awkward experiences for human beings. Like, people act like they're about to go to the firing squad or something. And I feel it too. You see people walking down the hall, totally fine. They see somebody else coming, and then they pull out their phone. They start looking at the wallpaper as if that's interesting, and then they do the awkward, "Hey, how's it going?" as they go by. And you've just inspired me. I'm just gonna start high-fiving people or something, because it's funny too. Yeah. What's that?
I said, high fives are great ones.
Yeah.
High fives are great.
And it's unexpected, and especially in corporate environments, it's very easy to start to lose yourself or feel like you have to be something else. But like you said, it's like we're all, when you said earlier that sales is totally based on relationships, life is all about relationships, because when we recognize that everyone around us is a person, it's not my coworker, it's not this, it's Jeremy, it's Dave, it's Karen, it's Sarah, it's all these different people. It's like, when we see that, we bring the humanity back. Like you said, you don't know what people are going through. And I remember one time I was on a work trip. I was out in California. I don't know why I remember it so distinctly, but there was a cashier. I asked her name just because I want to get to know people. And I told her she had really great eyes. And it wasn't because I was trying to get her number or get a date or any of that. It was true. And I wanted to give a compliment. And like you said, not only did she smile and she seemed really happy and lifted up, but I felt great afterwards too, just seeing her response. So that's such a powerful message. So it's having the gratitude in your life, but also celebrating yourself and then celebrating other people. And something I think is really interesting, it seems the contrast in your story from when you were younger struggling with alcohol, that you weren't celebrating, you weren't connected, you were running from things, and now it's like you're running towards people, you're running towards yourself, and you're so focused on connection. So that's actually one thing I want to touch on before we get off that piece is, so you shifted out of alcoholism. You said you made the decision, you were out, you were done. What were some of the biggest changes and shifts that you noticed in your life throughout that transition and throughout these past 7 years since you made that choice?
I mean, first and foremost, I started to love myself again, which the basis of anything is loving yourself. And I often tell people, if you have buckets and you're a bucket, if you don't fill your bucket up first, how can you ever fill up anyone else's bucket? And if you don't manage your bucket gets low. How are you going to give, right? And so just paying attention to myself and knowing that I love myself, I love everything I am, I'm not, everything I will be and won't be. And so that really helped me to start pouring to people like I'm telling you. And I noticed, when I started to change, I started attracting higher level people that thought differently, people that were on the path that I wanted to be on, of self-improvement and realizing that we're connected in the world, and the world is full of love, versus people that are in a bar being self-destructive. Life sucks, I had a bad day at work, fuck it, I'm gonna go get drunk, instead of saying, okay, I had a bad day at work, but what are the lessons there for me, right? It's such a different mindset. Like, I don't look at failures as failure. It's an opportunity to learn, and just understanding that. Those are some of the biggest things that helped me just transition into. And let's be frank, it's not like this just happened overnight. Like, it's easy for me to sit here now and I look back, but I had to work at it. Being happy is a choice, and I could. The default, for whatever reason. The default in my life was to be negative, and I had to work at it. Like, okay, what did I learn here? What's funny? What's funny about this? What's beautiful about this situation? I'm stuck in an elevator. Okay, what am I going to do? Whatever else. There's so many things. Opportunity. Just seeing the opportunity instead of it being a problem.
Dude, I love that, and that actually one of the most important lessons I learned was along that same vein, and it was. I either heard it from a speaker or a TED Talk or something like that, and what the person said was, when you're in a bad or difficult time or something that you're deeming as negative, ask yourself, what's the purpose here? And so I modified that to be, what am I here to learn, or who am I here to meet? Because then when I was in what seemed to be a negative circumstance, it had purpose or it had reason, or if it didn't, I had to go find it. So rather than just being down in the dumps and miserable, I said, all right, what am I here to learn, or who am I here to meet? And I would look around, I would pick my head up and start to look at the world again. And it was amazing how every time I thought of that, even a rainy day where everything was going wrong, suddenly just having that thought and seeing like, well, what am I here to learn? It's like, well, bring an umbrella next time, dude. And then you can laugh.
So funny you say that, because I live in San Diego. The last 6 weeks, 2 months, it's rained more than ever. And I was in my best suit, my best outfit. And I finished my appointment, my car was like half a mile down the road. And it starts pouring, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm walking. I'm walking through the rain. I'm going to walk through the rain like a G, have fun. When am I going to enjoy this experience again? And I walked, and I got sopping wet. I could have been mad that my nicest suit was sopping wet, but you know what? It rained. I could enjoy the rain. Last year we were complaining we didn't have any rain.
Right.
So let's enjoy the rain,
Dude, most Southern Californians act like rain is lava, like coming from the sky. And I mean, you guys are spoiled with weather. We all know that. But I mean, that's the thing. It's the multiplier effect of a person, of small actions. Like, if you see a guy in a kick-ass fitted suit, he's looking fly, and he's soaked to the bone, huge smile on his face, skipping, jumping in puddles. you might go, is that guy crazy? But you'll laugh, you'll smile, and it's infectious, that type of energy. And that, I mean, dude, it's like you said, you're outgoing, you're talkative. Like, for the listeners, like, Jeremy is the guy who just lights everybody up, who wants to get everybody to go out. A lot of people didn't want to go out on one of the days of the events. He got this whole group together. We went out and danced and had a great time. And it's like, so I want the listeners and everybody out there to really listen. So much of what Jeremy is talking about is mindset. So much of it is just a decision. So much of it is the gratitude and the appreciation. He's deciding to live this way, and you can too. He's been there. He's been in the shit. And like he said, part of why I love Jeremy is he's straight up. That's why we really click in our conversations, is he talks about the up and downs. He's not like, yeah, I left the negative stuff in the past and it's all uphill, or it's all great from here. He talks about the up and downs, and I think that's so important. But just choosing to celebrate, choosing to find the joy in life, that's where the mundane experiences become memorable, beautiful, and special. And what's also really powerful about this is it protects people from that idea of I'll be happy when the big thing happens, when I get the raise, when I get the car, the boat. It's I'll be happy now because there's so much to be happy for. And like you said, you started to attract even more of it when you embrace that. So
yeah, I mean, it's just all about the filter, right? Like, we fuck up.
Oh yeah.
That's it. And the thing that, and I agree with you, I love about our conversations, because you're the same way, is we're blunt. And the thing, when I quit drinking, I stopped running. I'm not going to run from my mistakes. I did some horrible fucking things, right? I did things I never would have imagined. But I can talk about them openly because I forgave myself. And I still make mistakes, and I still fuck up. Are they as bad? No, but that's subjective, right? Like, and you learn the lesson, and then it's like, okay, but I learned that lesson. I'm not going to do that again, right? Like,
right.
And be able to say, wow, I got sunburned, but fuck, that was a great day at the beach, right? Like, so it's just perspective, and you can, in any instant, change your perspective. You just have to choose. That's it. One moment, I can be Jeremy in this moment, right here, and go upstairs and turn on some music, and the next moment I'm something different. It's kind of funny. Like, I'm really happy, I'm having fun on this. The last part of my workday was brutal. Like, fuck. Today I was just like, I didn't have it, and I'm like, and then I was in the muck, and then I was like, I got this podcast to do with Brian, and listen to me now. Like, I'm on top of the world because I'm having fun again. And it's like, I don't allow myself to get stuck in the muck for too long, because I think people forget that you have to acknowledge that it's just a feeling, it's just a moment, and we all go through it. It's okay. It's okay.
I love that, because it's funny, because I had a very similar day. Like, I mean, and it's been a serious couple of weeks, just serious down, like, things aren't working, the tools falling apart, like this and that is happening, and I'm smiling a lot, like, more than I have all week, and it's just the fun, the honest conversation. But it's also just realizing how much there is to be grateful for and to celebrate. And actually, Jeremy, so right now there is a guest on my show I didn't tell you about, because I live near the train tracks. And actually, this is an example of making the good of something that people might see as bad. Is I live right near the train tracks, so trains inevitably come by during my show. And so instead of letting that be a bad thing, I turned the train into a character. And the character's name is Donna, and what she does is help promote my guests. So because Donna has come through and blown her horn, would you be willing to share where listeners can either come to find out more about you, either a website, or if they're interested in connecting with you, some way for them to reach out?
So right now my website is being done, so I don't have a website, but you can find me on Facebook, Jeremy Coombs. It's JeremyCoom, as in Mary, B as in boy, S. On Instagram, it's Jer Coombs. It's just Jer, my last name that I just spelled. Yeah, or jercoombs@gmail.
All right.
My email address. So you can connect with me anyway, anytime. If you want to talk, chat, find me. I'm always open, and I love connecting with people.
Fantastic, man. And for all the listeners, that will, of course, be in the show notes. Now, back into it, Jeremy. So time is flying by, and as it always does when you're having a good time. So one thing that I want to dig into for this last portion of the interview is relationships, because you and I both have laughed a lot at all of the different good and bad things that have happened in our past in relationships. And it's something that I think is interesting, that people are willing to invest time in learning about certain things, or invest in, let's say, a house, invest in a car, very, very seldomly do people invest time in learning about relationships and about people. And I think some people wait until it's too late. They wait until they need marriage counseling to learn about marriage and communication. They wait until things are falling apart in dating to go and seek something out. So it's something I've started to do now that I'm 27, and even, I mean, for the past couple of years. But if you had some advice for young adults, and particularly this show is for the people in their, early 20s or mid 20s up to 30, what would be the advice you would give them in terms of relationships, in terms of finding real meaningful connection, in terms of having fun, but, not losing control or losing sight of yourself? What would be some of your biggest pieces of advice there?
So actually, I'm reading this book called The E&P of Relationships. I would get that book right now. I would get that. I also learned that love is not a game of who goes first. Be vulnerable, connect, understand, set goals with your partner. And if it's friends, just find the people that you want. Who do you want to be like? Because you attract the people that you are. And so many people get caught up on things that are negative. But that's another thing, like being reflective, right? If you're having all these bad relationships, guess what? You're the common denominator. It's not them, right? And sometimes that's the hardest part, is saying, wow, I went through my fair share of crazy, and I put quotation mark crazy girls. Well, fuck, I was nuts too. Self-reflection, right? If you had a bunch of crazy relationships, you're the common denominator. Take a look at yourself, right? Like, I know that I had crazy girlfriends, but I was fucking nuts. And as a man, as I've evolved, I'm attracting the women that I deserve, right? And having that self-worth and saying, and I just went through this where I had to tell a woman that I was dating, like, I'm done. That's it. Because I had to draw a line in the sand and know what I'm worth. I know my worth. I know what I deserve. I know how to be treated. I'm confident that I'm a great guy. And so having that confidence allows you to pick and choose who you want in your life. And also having the ability to say goodbye. Right? To say goodbye. See things for what they are and not what you think they should be. Don't get caught in the fairy tale. If you're in a bad relationship, or if it's a good one, create the fairy tale. Get on the same page as that person. Right? Talk about things. And I think that as I was younger, I thought that it would just happen. And I missed out on, and I'm not afraid to say that there's probably 2 or 3 girls that were in my life that I missed out on that would have made wonderful wives. But I didn't give a shit. I didn't care about myself. And I thought it would just happen. I took it for granted. Like, time goes by so fast. And I'm 36 now, and I thought I would be married. I figured I'd have a huge family by now, and now I'm not. And I took that for granted. I took it for granted because I was young. Like, okay, it'll just happen. No, you got to work at it. Good relationships take work. And if you can learn about that, dive into self-improvement, read the 5 love languages, the 4 agreements, the E&P of relationship, and work on yourself and become the best person that you can be, you will have a beautiful relationship.
That's fantastic, man. And it mirrors a piece of advice I've heard where they say, write down everything that you want to see in your perfect partner and then become that person, or adopt those traits, or become that. And the thing for me that's really interesting, like you said, there were times where, oh, yeah, she was crazy, she this or that. I realized very recently that in my past, I mean, I'm 27, but like all of my past relationships, I ended up living the same story over and over. And I kept blaming the girls. I'm treating her so nice, and she just doesn't see it. And I had all this nice guy story about me. I had the victim mentality playing up big time. But like you said, when I finally looked in the mirror, it was like, who's the common denominator? And then I started to read about relationships. I read about masculinity, and I'm learning a ton about all of this. And what I saw was that I was mad that they were changing, that they weren't being who they were at the beginning, that I felt like I was dating a different person at the end than at the beginning. And the reality was, I was changing too. And so I was getting mad at her for and the things that had attracted her in the beginning, I was letting go of. And the things at the beginning that were me, I was letting go of because I thought that's what she wanted. And it was this whole whole big mess. And it's like, so it's interesting to really see it when you look in the mirror and look at yourself. It's a little bit of a like mind blowing to say like, wow, okay, it's on me. Like, this is my choice. But then it's also empowering to say, all right, because I own this and because this is my life, I'm going to choose to do things differently. And ever since I have, life and relationships and dating has been a totally different ballgame and much more fun. So there's one thing that you've shared with me, and I'd love for you to share with the audience, and it's the 3 keys to getting any woman. So I know, especially the guys have just perked up, but could you share those 3 keys to getting any woman and the whys behind them?
So it's very, very simple. Number 1 is be confident. Okay, you have to be confident in who you are. Number 2, if you're a dork, be a dork. Don't pretend to be something you're not. So 1 and 2 go hand in hand, right? Be that confident person. I'm a goofy, I'm dorky, I say stupid things, I dance, I do things, whatever, I own it. That's who I am. Thirdly, if you can make her laugh, you got her. Because women fall in love with us for the goofiest of reasons that we will never understand. But if you make her laugh, you got her.
Dude, I love it because it's simple, and oftentimes I think very simple things hold some of the greatest truths. And we often will brush off simple things as if, oh, it's too simple to make sense. But something that Jeremy and I both learned about at the conference that we were at with Sean Stevenson just a few weeks ago. So he said, be confident. And many people might be like, well, how can I be confident? And what Sean says is that confidence is sexy, courage is messy. And courage is each act that you do to overcome the fears in your life, to show you that you're capable of doing the things you want, of being who you want to be. So to become that confident guy that Jeremy's talking about, to really embrace who you are, and then to be able to make her laugh, that comes from self-expression, that comes from self-discovery. The interesting thing is we're looking at these other people as if they're going to fulfill a need or fill a hole in our lives. The reality is we need to fill ourselves up, like Jeremy said earlier. Take that bucket, patch the holes for yourself, and fill yourself up. And then all of a sudden, people want to be around that full person. They want to be around that person that is fully expressive, because I feel it's one of the greatest gifts that we can give is being completely unapologetically ourselves, because that gives other people permission. I've heard that said a number of ways from a number of different sources, but you being a true you gives other people the chance and the permission to do it. So, Jeremy, fantastic, man. I
think it's also important just, with courage, we're talking about how 15 seconds of insane courage. Realize that everyone gets nervous and scared. If you're approaching a girl, like, it doesn't matter how good looking you are, or what you think you are, everyone gets nervous. If you've been successful with ladies, unsuccessful, just do it. 15 seconds of insane courage will change your life. That's all you need is 15 seconds. And go and be nervous. She knows you're nervous. She thinks it's cute. Like, go for it.
Dude, it's such a funny thing because you and I both, and we were talking about this at the conference, are very outgoing, very bubbly. It's kind of life of the party energy type of things. But like I was telling you, I still get nervous on approaching girls. I still have self-doubt. I still look at the prettiest girl in the room and go, she'd never go for me, on those low days, on those down days. And the more that I've proven myself wrong by having those, which it seems like such a ridiculous thing to say, insane courage to just go up and talk to a girl, but at times it feels like that. And like anything else, you said, like dealing with rejection in business can help you with that. It's like, understand, it's not like they're not rejecting the entirety of you, and they're not saying you're not good enough. It's like, in fact, they may be doing you a favor because you may be so completely different. So it's being around those people, it's learning to embrace who you are to the point where you attract the right people so that when you do approach and you've done all the practice and you've dealt with rejection, that you can walk up confidently to a girl and then all of a sudden, boom, things click differently.
The greatest analogy in this is that you've never met a kid or a person who just got up and walked. Yes. No kid has ever just stood up and walked across the living room, right? Mm. What happens with kids? They get up, they fall down, they get back up. They get up, they fall down, they get back up. And that's the way we got to look at it. No matter if it's picking up a girl, asking a girl out, business, whatever it is, there's going to be bumps. We get up, we keep going. And eventually you hit your stride and all of a sudden you're moving. Now you can walk, you can jog, you can run. And just realizing that it's part of the process and it's okay.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying that it was there was never a kid that tried to get up and walk and said, well, I guess that's not for me, and just gave up on walking. It's the same thing. You know what's, I've been thinking about this too, man. It's like, I ponder really bizarre random things sometimes, but I was thinking, if I was as committed to my goals as I am to some of the games on my phone, I would be like light years ahead. Like, you know, one of these driving games I have failed thousands of times, but I'm like, I'm going to beat that score. I'm going to beat that time. Like, I'm going to get there. I put in time every day. I work towards that goal, and eventually I get there, no matter how many times I failed or the car's exploded. And I'm like, if we treated life like we do the apps on our phone, shit, man, we would be a hell of a lot further along. And it's like we said, like, I was like, that lesson came from me realizing how much damn time I was spending on this stupid app. But dude, as much as I don't like to say it, we have hit our hour, so we are going to dive into the 2 closing questions. So, 2 questions. We finish out every show like this, and the first one is relating to millennials, and this is millennials, young adults. I don't like the millennial term because people have all kinds of stigmas around that, but let's say young adults. My dad recommended this question to me, and I've loved it ever since he did, is that young adults often think they have no value to bring to the world. They feel that they're not experienced enough, they don't have the qualifications, that they really can't bring value. So what are some of the biggest pieces of value that you think young adults bring to the world?
So I would say perspective, right? Like, realize that you see the world in a unique manner. There is only one of you, and your skill set makes you unique, and that means that you can provide value to anyone, anywhere, any place, anytime. So go out and explore you, make the best of you, and help. Just help whoever, help the person next to you, talk to anyone, because you are only one person in this world that thinks like you.
Love it, dude. It's something where you may not understand the value you can deliver because you haven't tried enough things or learned enough about yourself. I've found that the best value that I can generally bring to people comes from some of my deepest discoveries, facing some of my biggest fears. And other times it's getting past my own bullshit and just being grateful and connecting with people, like Jeremy said. I mean, think about how different somebody's day could be when they go and tell their friends that somebody tried to do kung fu with them in the elevator. Like, that makes that person laugh. That makes the other person they tell that about laugh. And I guarantee that's going to hit 10 or 15 people just by the web of people that hear about that. And all of a sudden it's like you have 15 people smiling that wouldn't have been just because you were willing to be you. So understanding that value is not just about making money. Value is not just about doing projects. Value is about connecting and being with people. So the more that you understand that you have limitless inherent value as a person and you have tons to offer, once you accept that and embrace that mindset, then all of a sudden life can change and you can start to be giving tons of value every day, no matter what day you're in. So love that one, Jeremy. Now the closing question. And typically what I'll do is ask people if they could go back and talk to themselves at college graduation, talk to them younger selves, what advice would they give? But in this scenario, I'm going to shift it a little bit and say, if you could go back to talk to younger Jeremy at that dark time, that time where you were at your wit's end, that blackout day, what advice would you give to your younger self to help him?
Everything's going to be all right. I love you. Simple.
Mm-hmm. Everything's going to be all right. I love you. It's funny, man. Like I was just saying before, the simple things often hold the greatest truths or the most profound weight at times. And what I think is so critical is to understand that life is going to get tough. Life is going to throw us curveballs. We're going to have ups and downs. And sometimes it's that simple thing, a simple phrase saying, everything's going to be all right and I love you. And listeners, I really want you to pay attention because Jeremy said, love yourself. And when he said, I love you, he was saying it to him. He wasn't saying it to somebody else. He wasn't giving it to somebody else. That was for him to love himself, to care for himself, to fill up his own cup. So keep in mind that if you don't feel you're getting loved enough, that if you don't feel that you're getting enough of the things that you need in your life, be the one that loves yourself enough to give it to you. Love yourself more. I mean, we think it's selfish or we think it's narcissistic, but love yourself in a way that builds you up so you can give more fully to other people. So Jeremy, man, that is our time, and thank you so much, because I needed this, and this was awesome.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you did, man. I really did, and I'm smiling a lot more, even in spite of being tired and in spite of several long weeks in a row. But before we wrap up, can you give the listeners just one more time? So you said they could connect on Facebook. Can you let them know your email one more time? And go ahead.
Yeah, email is jercoombs@gmail, JERCOO, M as in Mary, B as in boy, S@gmail.com.
All right, guys. So as always, that'll be connected, or that'll all be linked up in the show notes. So thank you all for joining us today. Jeremy, I'm going to ask you to hang on for 1 second. Listeners, that's it for you. Thank you guys for being a part of it, and we'll be talking again real soon. Guys, like I said, this interview had such a powerful shift in emotion for both Jeremy and I from the beginning to the end, and I would love to hear from you if you noticed a particular point where that happened for both of us. Was there one phrase, was there one comment or one story that you noticed the most significant change in our behavior? And if you did see one, tweet me, hit me up on Instagram, shoot me a Facebook message, or email Jeremy or I, because we would love to hear from you on what you saw and what value you gained from this episode. So, as always, guys, I would be honored if you share this with your friends and following. But before we wrap up for today, I definitely want to hit on a few of the key lessons that really stood out for me in today's interview. So first is a quote from Jeremy. We all have shit, right? And it's how you look at it. You can let the shit stink, or you can add some water and grow a flower. What I think is so powerful about this is we all as human beings have shit in our lives. We have doubts, we have fears, insecurities, things we wished we'd done differently, things that we wish we could change, but we know we never can. And what most of us do is take that pile of steaming shit, throw it into the closet, and shut the door, hoping that no one will ever see. Then as people come into your life, they go, do I smell something? And you go, no, of course not. You spray some Febreze in the air and hope that they'll never see that door, that they'll never go and open that up, because the terror inside of us says, if they see all this shit that I have, they could never truly love me. They could never truly accept me. Now, here's the other option. Instead of letting that shit sit in the closet and fester and trying to hide it from people and having that constant fear that people will eventually open that door and see you for you, take that shit outside, put it into the ground, and grow a garden. Now everyone sees your shit, but then they see what you've built on top of it, because we all have challenges and things in our lives that we wish we could change, that we wish we hadn't experienced. But rather than let that be this scary pile of shit in the closet, it can be this amazing soil, this amazing fertilizer to grow yourself and develop yourself. But you've got to be able to bring it outside, let it air out, and give it the opportunity to be the lesson that it needs to be for you to grow. And you see some of the biggest gardens are the ones that are the best kept, that have the most fertilizer. So some of the most incredible people in your lives are the people who have been through the most shit, have done the most shit, have fucked up the most times. And I do air quotes there because we all have different levels. And we're very quick to look at other people and go, oh, well, they did way worse because they did X, and I'm not that bad because of Y. And the reality is, in our hearts, we feel like, but you know that this is something you want to change. So as much as possible, if you can think about one area in your life where you've been hiding something from people, even if it's a small lie, something where you're like, oh, it doesn't hurt anybody, air it out. A really interesting thing happens when you are willing to be vulnerable around others. Once they see that in you, they have permission to do it themselves. So next thing that I want to talk about is where Jeremy discussed the idea of when you decide you are one moment better. When you do one thing, you are one moment better. Because we can see the road to recovery, whether it be from addiction or from a massive weight gain or from a traumatic loss. We can see it as this never-ending road. That's something that we'll never be able to overcome, versus not even just saying one step, but one moment. That one decision that you make, you're better. even if you fall right back to your habits, because before you were in your habits and there was no thought. And that one thought is the little tiny domino that can start all the other dominoes going. And when you make that decision and you make one step, celebrate it. It's something that I am so bad at, admittedly, right now. I will make massive changes. I'll get big things done. And then I focus on everything I didn't do and everything that I wished I'd gotten done and everywhere where I messed up. Even right now recording this, there are moments where I'm going, man, maybe I should re-record this. I kind of stuttered there. But that's a big part of this show, is being my real self, being authentic and showing you guys that it's okay. And it's also very freeing and liberating to be your real self and not have any fear about who you are inside. So if you're struggling with something right now, recognize that you have the strength inside you to change it. And all it takes is one moment. And like Jeremy said, 15 seconds of insane courage can change your life. It's not just in dating, it is in everything. When you want to go talk to that person, when you want to go take on that challenge, when you want to reach out to somebody, when you want to start a workout plan, you literally could pause this interview right now and do 15 push-ups, and you may not have worked out in years, and that'll be the most you've worked out in years, and that is incredible. So I was even just texting Jeremy the other day, and when this interview is going live is several months after we actually did it, I was texting him the other day and having one of those down days, and he just reminded me, he said, how are things going? I said, it's kind of up and down. And he said, well, what's going on? And I told him the good things and then the bad things. And he said, well, let me get a hell yeah for the good things. And I'll tell you honestly, I was sitting on the toilet, I read the text, and I said, hell yeah, out loud for the first time. I've never done that before. I've never just been in my apartment alone and said hell yeah for something that I accomplished. And ever since then, each day I'm starting to find more things to celebrate, and I'm doing it and feeling a real different sense of who I am and how my days are. So where can you celebrate and say hell yeah in your life? Where can you challenge somebody to a kung fu fight in the elevator just to make them laugh? Where can you dance in the rain in your best suit because you're just so fucking happy to be alive that you're not afraid to celebrate no matter what anybody else thinks? And where will you give yourself permission to be happy in the way that it can have that multiplier effect and expand out to everyone else around you? Don't ever minimize the ability that you have to touch people's lives. Imagine driving through your car and seeing some guy dancing in the rain in a fly-ass suit and just going, man, I needed that. I needed a smile today. Whether you're laughing with him or at him, who cares? You smiled. So think about that when you are going through your days. Who are you there to meet? What lesson are you there to learn? How can you find the fun? And how can you make that fun be shared with everyone else around you? So guys, I love you all. Thank you for listening. As always, feel free to reach out to me with any questions at brian@overcominggraduation.com. You can always follow this podcast on iTunes or on Stitcher. And also you can check out the episodes at overcominggraduation.com. And if you would like to follow me and learn more about what Overcoming Graduation is doing and building, you can check out Overcoming Graduation on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the social medias and things. So, guys, thank you for joining me today. As always, it is a pleasure and an honor to share this time with you. And keep an eye out because the next episodes will be coming soon. And we got tons more incredible people, incredible stories, and incredible messages to share with you. So I love you guys. Keep it up. Keep being you. And go out and find the fun today.